This is the Hello World podcast, where we talk about habits of success, habits of excellence, entrepreneurship, leadership, learning and development, and outlook that will help us succeed through life. This is Louis Banta, CEO and Chief Trainer of Learning Just Made Better, or LJMB. This is episode 17, and we'll talk about habits of success. Our guest for today will talk about habits of success, future-proofing your career and company. And our guest is an avid entrepreneur, serial angel investor, highly sought-after keynote speaker, and author of Futureproof Your Career and Company. Over the years, with his popular leadership seminars and workshops, he has inspired over 10,000 leaders and prepared them for this increasingly disruptive future. Prior to his entrepreneurial and literary ventures and adventures, our guest was an award-winning CEO of global companies such as Inspiro and SPi Global. And under his leadership, these companies won over 100 awards, including Best Company of the Year, Best Employer of the Year, and Best Leadership Team of the Year. He was also recognized as the ICT CEO of the Year. He holds an International MBA from the Thunderbird School of Global Management. And when he's not busy future-proofing leaders, he is busy child-proofing his home for his two young daughters. He has lived in the Philippines for over 14 years and has recently moved to Singapore. My personal leadership idol and a person with whom I've worked with for the past 12 and 13 years, our guest for today, Maulik Parekh.
Hello, world.
Thank you for being here, Maulik, and for saying yes to our request for you to guest in the Hello World podcast.
I'm so excited. Congratulations for launching this podcast. I know I'm the guest number 17, so it seems like you have had a good run so far, and I hope I can help you take it to the next level.
Indeed, when the name Maulik came to mind again, it's definitely a very welcome addition to our roster of guests, Maulik, that also operate within the same circle. And then I also wanted to emphasize that we get guests here who are not just well-known in their fields, but also had made a personal, direct or the indirect impact on me, my leadership style, and my mindset. And here we go. I know we meet each other once a year, Maulik, for the benefit of our community of listeners. LJMB and Louis Banta, at least for once a year, would serve the leadership teams of Maulik since 2011 and even before that.
No, I think, it's a tradition that we have had for many, many years. And while you consider me as your idol, I have always looked up to you as somebody I can learn from, especially when it comes to entrepreneurial pursuits. I mean, the way you have turned this extremely difficult crisis, the times when people have gone out of business. I saw one of your LinkedIn posts recently where you mentioned that, you've had a huge impact on your business, some 15 million peso worth of business loss, which for you probably is just a pocket change. But you did not throw in your towel. You have actually figured out a way to get ahead of the curve and make what they call, make the lemonade out of the lemon that was given to you. So I look up to you and what you have done for my team over the years, as well as personally for me. It's good to be with you again today on the podcast.
And that's great, Maulik, that you actually saw that post. It's the greatest test of a speaker like you and me is when we actually experience the lessons that we usually just talk about in a group of people. And now I would learn more from you because of the very interesting topic that we had, very relevant. I know that businesses and individuals have been hit a lot. I know that will touch your book will touch on that career in the company. How do we now become future proof after having gone through this hardship? So, how did this book come about, Maulik? What's the driving force of future proofing your career in your company?
No, that's a great question. I'm getting that question everywhere, whenever I'm speaking to the journalists or some of the other leaders. And I'm telling them that, this book has been marinating in my consciousness for almost 3-4 years now. And for two key reasons, a professional reason and a personal reason. Professionally, as you know, until very recently, I was the CEO of Inspiro. And in my last 3 years with the company, I noticed three very powerful and disruptive forces gaining momentum, gaining speed, gaining strength. And I'm talking about artificial intelligence. I'm talking about the digital natives. I'm talking about the gig economy. The artificial intelligence I witnessed was slowly infiltrating our jobs and our processes. The digital natives were storming the workplace and turning it upside down. And the gig economy was changing not only who gets the job done, but also where, when, and how. So while this disruption was taking place at the workplace, my personal life, as you know, was also disrupted very positively some 4 years ago when my first daughter, Clara, was born. And that changed everything for me. I had a relationship with the future in the past where I was always thinking about the future when I was doing the strategy for the company, the 5-year plan, the 10-year plan. But once Clara arrived, future became more meaningful than just those strategy documents. I saw myself spending a lot more time thinking about what kind of future she will grow up into. I started paying attention to all the clues as to how the future may unfold and what kind of skills and talents that she would need to succeed. So, in a nutshell, the book that I wrote is as a result of this professional and personal curiosity as to the kind of future we are all going to experience over the next 10 years.
I'm just fascinated, Maulik, by how your role as the CEO and strategist has perfectly blended with your personal role as dad. Imagine that. Both roles really, there could be a lot of differences between those two roles, but one thing is common: the shared concern about future. How are our people going to succeed, and how are our children in the next generation definitely going to succeed in this, I would say, post-COVID world now, Maulik. And right now, leaders are, in the past 6 months, you've always heard COVID-19, COVID crisis, new normal, never normal. In fact, even our webinars and courses will always have that ender because of COVID or in these COVID times. There are plenty of articles, books being written about COVID, tips on COVID. But your book now goes beyond that. It's about the post-COVID world.
Yeah,
What are your thoughts on that?
I purposefully did that because, if you look around, as you mentioned, you are inundated with everything COVID-19 and the COVID-19 crisis and how it's impacting our lives and our jobs, our professions. But as leaders, yes, rightfully, we have to pay attention to what is urgent and important, which is the COVID-19. But as leaders, we also have to put ourselves in the quadrant, what I call the magic quadrant, right? Which is not urgent, but important. The three forces that I discussed with you, the artificial intelligence, the digital natives, the gig economy, are all the issues that fall into that magical quadrant, not urgent, but very important. And the reason I think they're important is because you see, COVID-19 one day will pass, hopefully soon. As the vaccines get developed and as they are distributed, One day we will see the end of this. Just like, when 9/11 happened, people thought that was the end of the world. People thought people would never travel through airlines anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And what happened? 6 months later, business was back to normal. So 9/11 now is a distant memory. Yes, it changed how we travel now. There is a lot more security at the airport. So we are used to that new normal. But it's not impacting our lives today. And it will be the same thing. In 2030, what we are experiencing with COVID-19 would be a distant memory. So what we should be focused on are the things that would impact beyond COVID-19. While the COVID-19 will actually slowly start dissipating, the three forces that I talked about are only going to continue gaining momentum. They're going to continue gaining strength. They're going to continue gaining speed. So think about it. AI, for example. McKinsey just did a study recently, and they found that over the next 10 years, between now and 2030, up to 375 million jobs could be displaced around the world. Let's talk about digital natives, for example. By 2030, when the last batch of baby boomers will reach the retirement age of 65, the digital natives will make up 2/3 of the workforce. 66+% of the workforce 10 years from now would be made up of the digital natives. The people we see today as interns or the entry-level employees will be sitting in the positions of power and influence.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about the gig economy. According to a recent study by Upwork, they are predicting that by 2030, some 50% or more of the US workforce will be engaged in the gig economy.
Mm-hmm.
They'll be involved in some freelancing. And that rate of growth for countries like the Philippines and India and China would even be higher.
Mm-hmm.
So the way we are looking at the work today is going to be significantly different in 10 years from what it is today. When I was growing up, Louis, back, and I write about this in the book, in 1991, I remember standing in a line outside of an American consulate in Mumbai.
Mm-hmm.
And I woke up at 4 in the morning. I stood in the line at 5 a.m. I was trying to get my student visa to go to the US. And luckily, I got that visa. And for me, that was a life-changing moment. But today, some 25, 30 years later, life-changing moment is not necessarily getting the visa stamp on your passport.
Mm-hmm.
Life-changing moment is what? Having internet connection and a smartphone or a tablet and accessing the world.
Mm-hmm.
You can now access the world of opportunities from where you are. You don't have to go somewhere to explore the opportunities in the world. So these three forces are so powerful. And more I did some research while writing this book. I realized that if we don't pay attention to these forces, if we don't understand them, if we don't learn how to adapt to them over the next 10 years, it could mean either companies are going to grow or they're going to become extinct. It could mean either you're going to be relevant in your job over the next 10 years or you'll become irrelevant.
And these three things will really make the next 10 years. What struck me was when you mentioned 2030, 2020 to 2030, the most disruptive decade of our time because of these three trends. And Maulik, you also, what made an impact on me is you mentioned that COVID is really just temporary, even if maybe the longest recent crisis that we will experience, it will really go away. This will not go forever. But these trends of AI, digital natives taking over the workforce, and this continuously ballooning gig economy are the things that we need to watch out for. And a lot of people have already written a lot on this, a lot have spoken on this. But again, your book is about the practical things that people need to prepare for or do in response to this.
Yes.
In relation to that, how should we prepare for this? How should we future-proof our career now in our company given this context?
Sure. And one quick thing on why, this next decade is going to be the most disruptive one, right? When I share these three forces with people, people realize they're important, but they ask me, but why these three forces and how are they related? Because when you look at them, first time, artificial intelligence or smart machines, the younger generations or the gig economy, they look disparate. They don't look related to each other. But if you take a step back and you look at them, you realize that they are related. Actually, they are siblings.
Mm-hmm.
They are born out of the digital revolution.
Mm-hmm.
Technology has basically brought them forth, and technology is the one that is helping them flourish. And as the technology accelerates, as the digital revolution accelerates over the next 10 years, all these forces are expected to peak all at the same time. So if I was a business leader today and I'm asking the weatherman, what's the forecast for the weather? The weather forecast for the next 10 years for any businessman or a woman is a perfect storm because all these forces are colliding together. It's like looking at the horizon and seeing all these storm clouds coming together and creating a scenario perfect for the perfect storm.
Mm-hmm. The continued VUCA, as you may call it, right? A volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous. There's
That's
even
right.
a new term right now, a RAP world, rapid, paradoxical world, entangled the world. Tangled, everything is connected. And I like it when you said these three trends, we need to be able to see the connection among all these three. So now appreciating that I need to watch out for these three and prepare myself, prepare my career. If I'm a professional, if I'm a digital native and I want to really succeed in the future, I need to prepare my career. If
That's
I'm
right.
a senior leader, I'm a CEO, I need to future proof my company. Okay? Let's start with future proofing the careers of our listeners, Maulik. What skills and talents will really be in demand so that we can go to, let's say, 3 to 5 things that we can do to future proof our careers?
So in the book, Louis, I share with them 5 dimensions of the future. You see, before you can future-proof your career, you have to cultivate, based on your research, based on study, based on watching news, reading newspapers, cultivate uh, an informed perspective on the dimensions of the future we will experience going forward. And in the book, I share 5 dimensions of the future that each and every leader should prepare for, get used to, and embrace all of them. So the first dimension is the going forward. The future is AI. The future is artificial intelligence. That train has left the station. It's not slowing down. Artificial intelligence will continue to infiltrate our jobs and our companies and our processes. So no need for us to live in a denial. So if the future is artificial intelligence, what should you do to improve your career, improve your chances for the promotions and growth? You should be looking at being a human that AI cannot replicate. You have to ask yourself, what can AI not do, at least over the next 10 years? Eventually, 100 years from now, maybe AI can literally replicate everything we are doing. And, that would be a different world. But I have written this book with the horizon to be 2030. Over the next 10 years, we have to ask ourselves, what can AI not do? And then master those skills and talents. So I have given some examples in the book, for example. AI can match our body and to a certain extent our mind. AI doesn't have a luxury of a heart or a conscience. AI doesn't understand emotions. It doesn't feel emotions. If you tell the word malasakit to AI, it would be an enigma to AI. So One of the things leaders should do over the next 10 years is to enhance their EQ, invest their time and effort in learning how to become a leader with better EQ, being able to understand and relate and feel other people's pain or joy, something that AI would not be able to do. The other thing I mentioned in the book is AI is not creative. AI cannot create on its own. AI creates based on the information you feed into it, but on its own. For example, we can look at a sunset and can be inspired to paint a masterpiece or write a song or write a poem. AI doesn't know how to do that. AI doesn't have intuition. AI cannot create something out of nothing. So another thing that humans should be doing to improve their chances for career growth is to work on their creativity. If you are analytical, then learn to become more creative. If you are creative, learn to become more analytical. You know, one of the things Leonardo da Vinci once said is that learn the art of the science and also the science of the art. Create a personality based on your whole brain, not just left brain or the right brain. The third thing I mentioned is AI doesn't know how to lead or inspire. Imagine, just think about the COVID-19 situation we are in. Imagine if AI was the CEO, for example, of a company or a country leader of a country, right? What would AI do in a scenario like this? AI doesn't know how to lead or inspire. So another thing that people should be thinking about doing is invest in their leadership skills. Figure out a way to become more inspiring, where you are not only resonating with people's mind and their motivation, but you are going beyond that. You are resonating with their heart. You are resonating with their innermost feelings. If you can do that, then you are in a good shape going forward. And I have written many more things about what kind of a human you can be in the book, but at least this kind of gives you a sample as to the first dimension, that the future is AI and that you can do. The next dimension of the future is change. That the future is change. If we are used to change in the past, it's only going to accelerate. You know, I shared with you earlier before we started the podcast that I'm so impressed that you were faced with a change in your life. You know, you're used to delivering your leadership seminars. I have seen many of those over the years in person because you are brilliant at that. I mean, you are born to do this and you do an amazing job. And what happened? You were given a lemon. This COVID-19 situation happened. You posted on your LinkedIn page that, you know, this has been a very tough time for you. You have had a loss of almost 15 million pesos worth of business in the last 6-7 months. But you did not throw in your towel. You know, you actually took this change and made a lemonade out of it, right? And so we need more of that. So future is going to be change. You have to be the catalyst for this change. You cannot just accept the change or embrace the change. You almost have to be the catalyst for it. You have to be the champion for it. You have to cultivate the muscle, as I call it in the book, to say no more to mediocrity, to say no more to nonsensical or unfair, and become the vehicle in companies for the positive change. If you can do that, then you're going to be in great demand. Because if you think about it, Louis, over the next 10 years, companies are going to look for leaders who are going to be driving this change at a micro level, because companies need to change also. So if companies cannot change at the micro level, at each employee level, then how would this change at a macro level? So in my opinion, being a catalyst is going to be one of the most highly sought after skill set that the companies will be looking for. So something people should be keeping in mind. So that's the second dimension. The third dimension is the future is people. even though technology and the digital revolution will continue to expand its presence in our life, people are not going anywhere.
Mhm.
There will be a lot of people that we'll have to work with over the next 10 years. So what do? The people who learn how to become an alchemist, who can take ordinary people and turn them into extraordinary people, where they can do amazing things that they never thought before,
Mhm.
then those people would be in demand. So if you can
Mhm.
become an alchemist where you can turn anything you touch into gold, so to speak,
Mhm.
then companies would need more of you.
Mhm.
So figure out a way to unshackle, the chains of complacency that's holding you back or holding your team members back, and take a leap toward greatness. If you can do
Mhm.
that, then your future, your career is future proof. The fourth element, and please ask me any questions, Louis, because I'm just going through the way the book is structured. But
Mhm.
if there's any question you have during this time.
Actually, I had a lot of insights, Maulik. You're also stimulating a lot of things in my head now. Going back to the AI uh, item that you mentioned, a lot of people are seeing AI as a threat that it will replace me, that I should resist AI or I should resist technology in general. But how powerful you put it there, that instead of seeing AI as a threat, accepting that it's really part of what we're doing right now and we'll do much of it in the future, looking at how we can uh, be distinguished from AI, or strengthening competencies that can never be performed by AI. And I like what you mentioned: EQ, leadership skills, ability to inspire. So yes, it really uh, underscores the importance of these influence skills, the soft skills as we call it, right? The soft skills even becoming more important than hard skills when you're talking of building your career in the future. So if you're a digital native and you want to really succeed in the next 10 years while you improve your functional expertise, take it from Maulik, you also have to strengthen your EQ, influence, leadership skills. So you can also, have that. That's the advantage that we have over AI. Am I making sense, Maulik? Did I put it right here?
Absolutely. I mean, you are in the leadership and development training arena, and a lot of companies spend a lot of effort in preparing their workforce for technical training, the
Mhm.
hard skills,
Mhm.
technical know-how of their job. But over the next 10 years, the soft skills are going to be equally important, if not more.
Mhm. So that's for future proofing your career. Okay? Go ahead,
And
Maulik. There's still two more dimensions. Yeah.
yes, yeah. So again, I'm trying to synthesize this, Louis, from 48,000 word book. So
Mhm.
I'm trying to distill this thing so that we can cover this in
Yes.
the time slot we have. But
Yes.
there is a lot of detail in the book itself. It goes into a lot of depth as to how do you actually cultivate those things. It's one thing to say you have to have this. It's another
Mhm.
thing to actually give them a roadmap as to how
Mhm.
you can actually go from point A to point B. So those are the things. Obviously, people will have to look it up in the book. So the
Mhm.
remaining two items for the career is the future is turbulent. Look around the world today. You see companies and industries becoming obsolete, and they're going through this disruption at a rate faster than ever before.
Mhm.
I think that jobs and skills are becoming irrelevant again, at a faster rate than what we have seen before.
Mhm.
The disruption is only gaining speed; it's gaining momentum.
Mhm.
So the world is very turbulent going forward. And because the world is turbulent, the people who can be the captains with the nerves of steel, who can lead their teams through poise and clarity, through
Mhm.
this turbulent weather, through this treacherous terrain, will succeed. So
Mhm.
I have an it's actually one of my favorite chapters in the book. How do you create the nerves of skills? And I give many, many examples of Michael Jordan, for example. Why was Michael Jordan always be the one who would make a buzzer beater score that would have Bulls win the championship or the game? Why was Tiger Woods the one with his steely stare, walking down the 18th runway and then finishing a job and walking away with a trophy? How do you cultivate those nerves of steel when the pressure is on? How do you show grace under fire? So if you can cultivate some of those skills, it will be amazing for your career. And then the fifth element, Louis, is that future is unknown. We don't know everything that will happen. In fact, Yogi Berra once said that it's very hard to predict, especially the future. And it's kind of funny, right? Because it is very hard to predict something that hasn't happened yet, but it's not impossible. And I have a chapter that is dedicated to how to become a futurist. And it talks about paying attention to the clues around you that gives you insights into where the future is going. The fact that my daughter, Clara, cannot even spend 15 seconds watching the full video on TikTok. She scrolls up before even the 15-second video is done, tells me something as to where the future is. The fact that, my friends in India are learning new skills using YouTube videos, not going to a school, but learning completely new skills on a YouTube video tells me that the future is not the traditional education that we are used to in the past. The world of education is changing. So if you pay attention to all these clues, then you can actually create a pretty informed perspective on how the future would look. So, even though future is unknown, for your career, you should actually cultivate a pretty informed perspective on where the future is going by paying attention to these clues, by studying them, by synthesizing them, and then extrapolating them. Those are the 5 dimensions.
The last one is really of interest to me, Maulik, because the term future proofing is also brings that question: how can you future proof when you don't and nobody can really see the future? But I like what you mentioned. It can be difficult, right? It requires a lot of work, but it is possible to be able to predict the future. You said start by paying attention, and just to reference to what's happened in the past 6 months, those organizations or individuals who were paying attention to the trends pre-COVID, who embarked on digital transformation ahead of their competitors or peers, individuals who also did self-study so that they can do other skills, were the ones who were surviving, if not thriving, in the past 6 months. So to our listeners, please take a look at what just happened here. Those who were ready, who were paying attention to what's happening, were ready for this. Now, how could we be ready for the next 10 years? So pay attention to what's happening around us. Now, moving to the organizational perspective, Maulik. Earlier was really, if I'm a digital native, or regardless of generation, right? Even if I'm Gen X or I'm a baby boomer who might extend some years in the corporate setup, these are the things that I need to prepare for, so I can still have a meaningful career in the next 10 years. Moving to organizational leadership. If you're leading a company, what traits of a successful company in the future should senior leaders start building right now?
Sure. And it's the same philosophy, Louis, right? Leaders collectively should create an informed perspective on the dimensions of the future that they would encounter over the next 10 years. And I talk about 5 dimensions for the companies. And the first dimension is that the future is digital. So transform your business to lead your industry, transform your business to be the disruptor
Mhm.
and not be disrupted. And a
Mhm.
lot of the times, people think this digital transformation is about technology. You know, you see many companies failing at digital transformation because they look at the latest buzzwords in the technology world, and
Mhm.
they think that if they buy this technology and insert it into their legacy system, suddenly they would be transformed as a
Mhm.
company. But
Mhm.
digital transformation actually is not about technology. Technology is just a means to an end.
Mhm.
Uh, the transformation itself is about defining what problem you're trying to solve.
Mhm.
It's defining what kind of value you want to create for your stakeholders.
Mhm.
It's defining how can you make your customer experience better? How can you make your employee experience better?
Mhm.
And last but not the least, digital transformation is about tweaking your business model if necessary, or even completely revamping it. You know, I give
Mhm.
an example in the book that Domino's Pizza, for example, just 12 years ago was struggling. And they only gave you only two options to order Domino's Pizza
Mhm.
12 years ago. Either you walk into their store in the US, or if they have other locations around the world, or you call and then they deliver. Today,
Mhm.
they have gone through massive digital transformation,
Mhm.
and they give people options to order pizza through 15 different ways, including not clicking. There is a zero click option. You just have to open their app, and if it
Mhm.
remains open at for 10 seconds or so, Domino's automatically delivers your favorite pizza, which it
Uh-huh.
already has in their database.
Mhm.
So the reason why it has more than 50% of the share in the US online market is
Mhm.
because it has been investing in the digital transformation by keeping the customer at the center of it.
Mhm.
Their
Mhm.
transformation was not about technology. It was about how do we make the customer's life easier?
Mhm.
And that's what they have done.
Mhm.
So, first and foremost, I think companies would need to do is to take a step back and say, how can we improve our customer experience? How can we
Uh-huh.
improve our employee experience?
Mhm.
How do we create value for all the stakeholders?
Mhm.
And in order to do that, do we need to completely revamp our business model or not? So that's
Mhm.
number one. The second dimension for the companies is that future is meaningful.
Mhm.
You know, gone are the days when people and the companies would only talk about their corporate social responsibility in their annual report, and there is a
Mhm.
paragraph assigned to their corporate social responsibility, and then there is a picture of the CEO giving a big cardboard check
Mhm.
to a local charity. Those are
Mhm.
the days that are gone. It's a new world now with the digital natives storming the workplace. They are very purpose driven. They
Mhm.
want to know what are you committing to as part of your corporate social responsibility before they commit to your brand, both
Mhm.
as employees as well as customers. They want to know what you stand for before they stand with you.
Mhm.
So how do you become purpose driven company? You have to define a purpose that actually serves as your true north. It gives you direction when you are lost,
Mhm.
when you are facing difficult decisions as to what to do, right? And I give many examples in the book as to how best in class companies have done that. For example, Patagonia. I give an example of that company in my book that it is so driven by its efforts around improving the environment that it selects people who are highly motivated to improve the environment.
Mhm.
In fact, when you go to apply for the job and you get the job, you don't get a typical handbook. The title of the handbook is something like "Let My Employees Surf," and those employees working at their head office are actually allowed to go and surf if the
Mhm.
swell is high.
Mhm.
Nobody is asking them questions. So, how do you create a culture that is driven by some singular purpose that everybody can rally behind?
Mhm.
And the purpose that animates everything that you do within your organization. So it's going to be very important, especially with the digital natives, not just being the biggest part of your employees, but also becoming a huge part of your consumer group.
Mm-hmm. So far, Maulik, before you continue, what's
Yeah.
striking to me is, again, digital is not just about technology. It's more of the problems that you solve. It's more of the people. And now, in the second thing that you mentioned, it's now about culture. Pay attention to culture and purpose.
Exactly. Very important. Companies who are going to nail those two things are going to be in a much better position to embrace the future and thrive going forward. So the third one, Louis, is the future is boundless, meaning there are so many opportunities for companies to take advantage of. But in order to do that, they would have to unleash innovation. And one of the reasons why companies are struggling with innovation today is because they think that if they become cosmetic, if they take some random disjointed actions to appear like they are innovative, they will become innovative. So I've seen companies who suddenly out of the blue will take all of the C-suite members, fly them into Silicon Valley for a week, let them go and visit Google or Amazon or some of the other startups. And they think that if they breathe this innovation coming from other companies, it will transform the leaders, but also the companies. But that doesn't happen. I've seen companies who say, okay, well, you know what, we want to be innovation. We want to be innovative. So they go out and buy this small startup, but they don't change the culture of their big organization. So what happens is they buy this startup, but then it suffocates in this extremely bureaucratic parent company. Or I've seen companies who just set up a innovation lab and think that by just having few people who are assigned to thinking innovation, they would become innovative. But that doesn't happen either, because the rest of the organization is extremely would have an extreme hard time adapting to any of the new ideas coming from this innovation lab. So, you cannot become innovative by doing this random cosmetic disjointed actions. You can become innovative by really defining what innovation means to your company. There are many definitions. If you go and Google the definition of innovation, there are at least 100 or more different definitions. So people have to decide first, what does innovation mean to your company? Then you have to create your own innovation strategy. Then you have to come up with an action plan and execute that action plan flawlessly. If you don't do this thing, then innovation would just remain a buzzword, but it won't change anything in your company as well.
And Maulik, when people talk about innovation, they really refer to what others have done, innovative blockbusters. But what worked in one may not necessarily work in your case, no? Or within your context. So it's not a copy paste thing.
No, exactly. And I actually give three different examples, Louis, as to three typical innovation strategies companies can adapt to. The one is where you are making small, minor changes to the existing products. For example, Gillette. Gillette razor, I've been using it for some 25 years since I started shaving. And over the years, it has improved. First, I remember my first Gillette only had one blade, and now there are 5 blades, and then there are things that make shaving so easier and feels so good. But those innovations that Gillette did are all incremental innovation. They were little by little, they were changing it. So that's one innovation, one type of innovation where you incrementally improve your existing products. The second type of innovation that I talk about is the one that Amazon did. They started a company by selling books, but then they realized that there is no need for them to only focus on the books. They have figured out how the supply chain works for the books. So they can sell practically anything. So they went from selling books to practically anything to everybody around the world. And it has become, a $1 trillion plus company over the years. So That's a different philosophy where you have a product and you expand horizontally. It's called the adjacent innovation.
Mhm.
And then the third innovation I talk about is what Apple did. When Steve Jobs introduced iPhone, there was no market for iPhone. There was no smartphone before that.
Correct.
They actually created a new category. So that's a different innovation. So companies, they would have to ask themselves, which innovation strategy would fit for them? Is it the incremental innovation? Is it the adjacent innovation, or completely new innovation where you introduce a new category in the world?
Wow. I'm thinking of a lot of innovation around us, Maulik. And you really have to decide. I think that's the key word that you mentioned. Decide what kind of innovation will you do.
Yeah.
Innovating is a conscious and intentional choice for leaders. It can also apply to a professional who wants to also build a successful career. Okay?
Yes.
How can companies avoid the mistakes in digital? Would you have anything else there? Or you want to talk about 5 things now that we can do to future-proof companies and organizations?
Sure. So, we covered the three of them. The future is digital, the future is meaningful, the future is boundless. And the remaining two for the companies is that the future is new. There are a lot of new things that would be introduced to us as a company. And the best way to thrive in this environment is actually to unleash and inspire learning within your workforce. As companies look at the next 10 years, they would realize that many of their employees would need a lot of upskilling just to keep up with the technological changes taking place in the world. They would also realize that many of their employees may need complete reskilling because a lot of these jobs would be lost to AI or automation. And they would also realize that almost all of your employees would need some training on how to partner with AI, how to let the AI augment you as a human being. It's a skill set that people would need to learn over the next 10 years. So in the past, you are you are the master of L&D, the leadership and development. So you know how this world works. Most of the people are focused on their urgent and important needs. When people call you to come and deliver a seminar or leadership talk, a lot of the times what they are trying to do is to fix their existing issues. Yes. And I think what people would need to do for the next 10 years is to take a step back and have a very long-term view, a very strategic view of their leadership and development training efforts that they are doing in the company. Map out their strategy for the entire next 10 years. So that's the fourth element that I discuss in the book. And then the fifth one is that future is fun. Even though, when I take you through all the challenges that are coming our way, that the future is turbulent, that the journey is going to be very hard and arduous, at the end of the day, and you and I have discussed this many times, it's up to the leaders whether even the hardest journey becomes the journey of a lifetime for your employee. Whether it's fun for them. Even though it's hard, it's up to the leaders to make sure that the journey is fun for your employees. So it's very important that leaders take all the steps necessary to create an environment, create a culture where employees feel appreciated, employees feel like the company trusts them, employees feel like that their voice is heard and respected. If you create that environment, then the future will be fun for the company, but also for your employees. Those are the 5 elements of the future-proofing your company.
You got me there on the last one. The future is fun. In fact, anxiety is the fear of the future. Yes, and to somebody who may not be able to see the future, whether you're a professional or a leader, fun may be the last word that you will think of, right, when describing the future. I also like it, Maulik, that you to plug in leadership development and to our community of listeners, having worked with Maulik. In fact, my first interview with Maulik 13 years ago was about really investing in a continuous leadership development program. It touches on EQ that you mentioned earlier, soft skills, being able to augment AI, and leadership is all about inspiring and influencing. Yes, this guy, Maulik, has really been a champion of learning and development and leadership development, and how much more important it is and it will be in the next 10 years. Maulik, I can see that the book, your book, Futureproofing Your Career and Company, is really all about the right mindset. It's while you give a lot of examples of successes and failures of individuals and organizations, no, a lot of other stories that you have in the book, you just simply laid down how we should see the future. Yes, and
Yeah.
what I like is future is fun. It's boundless. No, it's meaningful. It's while you expect, let's say, a checklist from Maulik. Maybe Maulik, it's not a checklist. It's really the right way of viewing the future, so you get more excited and more prepared to succeed in this next 10 years and beyond.
I could not have said it better.
How do we get a copy of this book, Maulik? You already, of course, I read the advanced manuscript that you sent, eh? But really wanting to see the final book in itself, and our community of listeners would also be interested to get a copy. Is it available as an ebook, hard copies in bookstores, especially given the quarantine constraints now? How do we get a copy of this?
So thank you for asking. The book is in the final stretch now of getting done. It goes on sale on Amazon on November 14th, and you can buy either ebook or a paper book, the softcover paperback book. We are also partnering here locally in the Philippines with ABS-CBN Books, and they will be distributing the books to fully booked as well as national bookstores, mainly in Manila and Cebu, perhaps in Dumaguete, and we'll share those details on my website as it becomes available. The book will also become available, by the way, for pre-order starting October 17th. So you can actually get a copy of the book on Amazon, or if you don't have an Amazon account, please send us an email at info@maulikparekh.com. And based on where you are, we'll be glad to get a copy to you and make sure that you have a copy to read on November 14th.
We'll make sure that in the YouTube video version of our podcast, Maulik, you will have all of those information on the final frame of this of the video, so people can refer to it. Okay?
Sure.
And yes, Maulik, it's been a great pleasure to be with you. I often joke with you. At least we see each other once a year, because my annual leadership summits with your leadership team happen every December. At least we see each other once a year. This time, it's really just virtual, something that we have to really get used to. But I think that's also a theme that will run in the next 10 years or more, getting used to, as Maulik said, taking the cue from what's happening around you and immediately adapting. And having worked with you, Maulik, for the past 12, 13 years, I know that this book has been written by a practitioner, not a theoretician. Somebody who's really been on the ground, leading teams. And I've worked with you in several organizations, Maulik, and we know how turbulent it was before, just different versions of turbulence. But Maulik also mentioned the different kind of disruption that that will happen in the next 10 years. Let's consider ourselves warned of these disruptions. Nothing new with AI, nothing new with digital natives. We've heard of gig economy before, but Maulik's book will arm us more with habits and mindsets of really fully embracing this feature, because only when we embrace it, can we really get ready to future-proof our career and our company? My leadership idol, Maulik Parekh, in the house for Hello World Podcast.
Thank you. Thank you, Louis.
Can we just say, greet our listeners again, Maulik, with our ending greeting? Hello world, with that intonation. I will try to sync, right? I know it's difficult to sync, right?
Are we doing it
Okay, let's
together?
do it. Yes,
Yeah.
we'll say it together. We'll try to say it together. Okay.
Okay.
Oh, 3, 2, 1.
Hello.
Hello world. Once again, Maulik Parekh in Hello World Podcast, episode 17. Thank you so much for being with us. And watch out, grab a copy of Maulik's book, Amazon, and in your favorite bookstores. Check out the link in our YouTube channel, final screen. Hi, this is Louis Banta, CEO and Chief Consultant of LJMB, or Learning Just Made Better. Thanks for watching my video. To get more videos like this, click subscribe and hit the bell icon below. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, comment down below, and share this to others.